Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and we have to take a look about. There's a lot going on in Arizona. The Coyotes with Chychrun, the arena situation, their direction going into the trade deadline. We have so much to go over in Arizona, and it's not just Jacob Chychrun. So we'll be going over that today. So speaking of Jacob Chychrun, let's get this news out of the way. There is more updates on Jacob Chychrun. This is a guy that is probably one of the highly regarded defensemen in the NHL right now. He is having a down season, which is creating a little bit of drama, I guess you could say, in terms of his trade value. Are you getting the Jacob Chychrun from his entire career so far, the former top 5 draft pick? Or are you drafting, or are you trading for the defenseman that he's been this season? And more than likely, you're going to get the guy that's been in Arizona for the past couple of years. As the Arizona Coyotes right now sit, dead last in the Western Conference and second worst in the NHL, only behind the Montreal Canadiens. So the Arizona Coyotes, there's a lot of talk about Chychrun, and the first one is from Elliot Friedman, a big hockey insider. The Coyotes, Bruins, Ducks, Blue Jackets, and Panthers are the main teams in on Jacob Chychrun. This comes as really no surprise. You're looking at teams that want a long-term stability in terms of a defenseman. Jacob Chychrun, who is signed till the summer of 2024, he's going to be around for a little while. And this is a defenseman that is a really good blue-chip defenseman. I think the Coyotes are trying to gauge the value of Jacob Chychrun, what teams are really interested, and I think they're getting more of a sense of that right now. All these teams make sense. The Hurricanes always are looking for defensemen. We know they're always looking to bolster that up. I could definitely see him being a fit there. The Boston Bruins, really since they've got Charlie McAvoy, and that's kind of it. Jaro Vaakainen hasn't really developed into what they were hoping. Jakub Zboril, he hasn't really developed into what they really wanted either. He actually went to Seattle. And Jeremy Lauzon. So all those guys never really became those defensemen. So other than McAvoy, you had a guy like, Jacob Chychrun in there. He fits the mold of the Bruins. I think he would be a really good fit there. Now, obviously, this is my bias, but the Anaheim Ducks clearly are a team that would be a good fit there, as they're kind of looking to move on from guys like Josh Manson, potentially Hampus Lindholm, one of my favorites, Cam Fowler. They're looking to change things up there, and you've got Kevin Shattenkirk there for a little bit longer, but he's not a long-term solution. He's an older defenseman, so I could see the Arizona Coyotes definitely asking the Ducks, hey, what are you looking for Jacob Chychrun? They've got the prospects, they've got the depth assets. Imagine Jacob Chychrun and Jamie Drysdale as your top pair in Anaheim in the next 2 to 3 years. That sounds really good to me. The Blue Jackets, it's interesting with the Blue Jackets because out of all these teams, they're really the furthest away. As the Blue Jackets just let go of Seth Jones, their big ticket defenseman, sending him to the Chicago Blackhawks. That was, unfortunately, that came to an end. But the Jackets are interesting because they're one of the few teams that can give the assets in terms of draft picks and prospects that the Coyotes would want. They have a lot of draft picks and prospects from that Seth Jones trade, from multiple trades they've made here over the past 2 or 3 years. You have guys like Cole Sillinger in the line, and I think even Foodie, right? There's a bunch of guys that they could go after that I think the Coyotes would be interested in. And I don't see the Coyotes giving up first or second round picks. That is the only thing with the Blue Jackets I'm not too sold on if they make a move. But that's why I think this is a deal that will get done this summer. I could see let's say the Blue Jackets have the 6th or 7th pick, right, at the draft. They could go to the Coyotes and say, listen, you gave the Canucks your draft pick last year for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Why don't you do the same thing here? We'll take Jacob Chychrun. You get our 6th overall pick. You maybe get 1 or 2 of our good prospects and call it a day, right? So I think there's definitely something to be said about the Coyotes maybe looking at the Blue Jackets because of the assets they have. And obviously the most interesting one here is the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers already have a Norris pairing defense. They've got Aaron Ekblad and Mackenzie Weegar, who are both Norris contenders. Maybe not as much Weegar right now, but the two of them have been incredible this year. And your second pairing, you've got some interesting names. You've obviously had a little bit of a changeover there. But this kid's from Boca Raton, Florida. He's not too far away from where the Panthers play. He's obviously got some connections there. You would have to think Jacob Chychrun, in terms of the long game, the Panthers would probably be able to sign Jacob Chychrun long term because, again, his hometown. So that is definitely going to be interesting. Now, this is another kind of interesting thing on Chychrun, a name that wasn't really talked about much, but Darren Drager says the Toronto Maple Leafs have at least kicked tires on Coyotes defenseman Jacob Chychrun. Again, I think a lot of teams are kicking tires. If you are not doing your job as a general manager, if you haven't called the Arizona Coyotes about Chychrun, damn, you could be the Montreal Canadiens for all I care. You could be the Tampa Bay Lightning. Every team should be calling about Jacob Chychrun at the very least and try to get an idea of what the price is. Not saying you have to make a trade every time you make that call, but you have to at least be asking, because the fact that Jacob Chychrun is available, that turned some heads, because for the last 2 years when the Coyotes have kind of been blowing up the ship, Clayton Keller and Jacob Chychrun were really the untouchables. And now you're at a stage where you've traded all those guys away and they're saying, yeah, maybe we should move Jacob Chychrun. And now the entire game has been flipped on its head. The one guy that was the untouchable is no longer the untouchable, and it just kind of changes the mindset. Now, this is some more information on Chychrun. This is from George Richards. He says the Panthers still have interest in Jacob Chychrun, but it's unlikely they can afford the asking price. And the reason they say that is because apparently from what the Florida Panthers have said, Anton Lundell, who was their first-round pick here in 2021, he already played in the NHL this season. He's probably going to be the next Alexander Barkov. So they're going to have two Barkovs. They're going to have Alexander Barkov and Alexander Barkov Jr., or also known as Anton Lundell. They have two very similar players, let alone they're both the same nationality, two Finnish centers. And I think this is a guy that the Coyotes would love to have. They would love to add an Anton Lundell to their roster. But unfortunately, though, it doesn't really sound like the Panthers are too interested in making that sort of move. So now we get some more information away from the Leafs, away from the Panthers. And this is from Elliot Friedman. The Los Angeles Kings and the New York Rangers are out of the Jacob Chychrun sweepstakes for now. Now, the reason that is significant is because, well, you probably look at the deepest, prospect pools in the NHL. It's probably the Los Angeles Kings and the New York Rangers, which kind of sucks for the Coyotes because there's a reason to believe if they gave an offer of Hedel, Kakko, a first, the Rangers would definitely have to have some interest there. Yet the problem is that's probably the offers they were getting. And the Rangers were probably, Chris Drury probably just said, I really don't want to give up that much. And that's unfortunately what happens in that situation. So maybe that lowers the value of Chychrun in some regard because the Kings and Rangers, who have a lot to give up, aren't willing to give up that. It does change the market just slightly for Jacob Chychrun. Now, again, we've heard this stuff before. So take it with a grain of salt, but the fact that the Rangers and Kings at the moment are out, that is definitely something that we have to look into. So now we get more on the arena front for the Coyotes. So the headlines from Chris Johnson, the Coyotes are actually quite excited about the possibility of playing at ASU. It's very close to where the new rink would be built in Tempe, Arizona. And I did pronounce that right, Tempe, Arizona. Which they see as a positive. At this point, the NHL seems on board, and that was from Chris Johnson at TSN Insider Trading. So I think what we have to really look at here for the Coyotes is this is a big deal move. I think this is the kind of move that if you're the Coyotes, you want some stability, you need to get the Tempe Arena built because this is a bridge that there's nowhere to cross to. If you don't have the arena in the long-term plans, this bridge that they're building with the ASU, it's not really worth building. And at that point, you'd have to move. But the NHL has really made it clear that they want to stay in Arizona, and they're very committed to it. Now, comes the politics side of things. I think what's interesting is The NHL, I'm sure owners are not happy about this, especially your big market teams. Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Chicago, the Rangers, right? All those big market teams, they can't be too happy about paying the Coyotes to stay in the league because the Coyotes are not going to make enough money. And I wonder if ownership is kind of saying, is this really something we want to do? Do we want to pay for the Coyotes to stay in Arizona? And Gary Bettman has really made it quite clear that he is keeping that team in Arizona. He is, pretty much cemented his feet into the pavement there and really won't budge. And I think the Coyotes will be there for the foreseeable future. They had some talks with the Quebec governors and government about maybe bringing a team there. And I think once that kind of fell through, especially with the Canadian dollar and the regulations right now with all this COVID stuff, it's made it that much harder for the NHL to look at Canada right now. And you could tell from the NHL All-Star Game press conference, Gary Bettman is not too thrilled right now with the Canadian government and everything going on up there. So this is more information on the Coyotes front. So this is from Chris Johnson, again from TSN Insider Trading. The Coyotes have let it be known that they are willing to take on contracts or money in exchange for some future assets. Arizona are certainly eyeing a chance to be an important go-between. So if you don't understand what that means, that's basically they're willing to be that third team in a trade. So let's say, trying to think of a good example. There are certain teams out there that have problems with the salary cap, right? So if a team is trying to move salary, but they don't have the cap space, you make a 3-team trade. That has been a very popular thing here. We've seen at least 1 or 2 of them here in the past 2 or 3 years, right? So the Coyotes seem like a team that is willing to say, listen, we're going to take this bad contract so you can bring in this good contract so that team doesn't have to take your bad contract, but you just have to give us draft picks. And I think the Coyotes are going to be willing to do that in a 3-way trade. So if Tampa Bay is trying to add more to their roster, which doesn't sound like they are, I'm trying to think, who would be a better example? Let's say the Leafs, right? Hypothetical. Let's say the Leafs go after, let's say they go after John Klingberg, right? They go after John Klingberg. They can't fit the cap space under, right? So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to move a bad contract from Toronto, and instead of bringing it to the Dallas Stars, who don't want to eat that cap, the Coyotes will take it, but you also have to give them a first and a second round pick to take that bad contract. Similar situation in Philadelphia, right? The Flyers, they're going to move Claude Giroux. He's got $8 million on his cap hit. Now, that will be less at the deadline when he's probably going to get traded, but even let's say if it's $4 million, right? That $4 million, you bring him to a team like Tampa or one of those teams that's a cap team, that's not going to work. So that's where that team would give up a bad contract to the Coyotes, and again, they get their assets. You get where I'm going with this, right? So the Coyotes right now, the talk is all future assets, and this is from Chris Johnson. The Coyotes are willing to take on contracts or money for future contracts and future assets. So that's what we're looking at here. This is from Gary Bettman now. This is a source from Jesse Granger. Gary Bettman says playing in a 5,000-seat arena won't have an impact on NHL revenue sharing, which they ran one test where the Coyotes actually made more money now than they did in their current arena situation. They ran one test that did that. I wonder how many tests they ran, though. That's the thing, right? So the Coyotes already get a maximum amount, so that won't change. There are models that actually predict Arizona might increase revenue playing games at ASU, again, compared to what they did in their current arena right now in Gila River Arena. So the problem is, though, with 5,000 seats before renovations, again, this happened at Barclays Center. When the Islanders moved to Brooklyn, I think it was a 12,000 seat hockey arena, and it was a 14 or 15,000 seat arena for basketball. Yet when you talk about basketball being a smaller court than hockey, you have more seats down low. You have the Zamboni, and like all that stuff comes into play. That's less that you're going to see in terms of seating. That adds up very, very quickly. So The Coyotes at 5,000 at right now, you could be looking at potentially maybe around a little over 3,000 seats potentially when it's calculated to fit NHL standards. You're looking at 3,000 seats probably, which means with that limited capacity, you're talking about a game that normally would cost you, say, $30-$40 to go to a Coyotes game at Gila River. It could cost you maybe triple that. It could cost you $120 to $200 just to get your foot in the door of a college arena. So if that's the case, they could have ran calculations where they made more than Gila River Arena. Yet Gary Bettman forgets to mention how it costs $500 per seat. So that's the kind of thing where that could be a problem, and that's if the Coyotes sell out. And I'm not being, I'm not trying to, be facetious when I say that. Like, the Coyotes, this is not a good hockey team. And you look at what they're doing, they're potentially going to trade their best player, Jacob Chychrun. What do you have to sell on the front of ASU? What player are you going to put there? Clayton Keller, who everybody's saying is this overpaid bum now since he got his big deal. So and now you want to bring in Austin Matthews. Does Austin Matthews, who's playing in a top 6 franchise in Toronto, not doing well in the playoffs, but at least making the playoffs, making good money, how are the Coyotes going to have the money to pay for Austin Matthews? It's not realistic, and I think that's one of the things where we have this, that you can only spend so much money. It's great for the smaller market teams. It's great for teams like the Coyotes because the Leafs and the Canadiens and the Rangers are paying for you to have Austin Matthews. That sounds like communism to me. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's the way the NHL is. They want to have parity. They want to have the non-baseball effect, right? You don't want to have where baseball, it's the same 5 or 6 teams every year. So that's why they do it. But there is some limitations to that. And I think that's something that will be renegotiated in the next CBA. Because this kind of situation with the Coyotes, I don't think owners are going to want that to happen again. So that is the latest on the Arizona Coyotes. There's a ton to talk about. We almost 20 minutes into this one. But man, the Coyotes, they're a mess. And maybe a hot mess in some sense, but very interesting what's happened in Arizona. So I'll keep you guys updated as best as I can. But right now, that's where we're at with the Yotes. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, you guys know what to do. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time.